The wooden pier creaked beneath the weight of the gathering crowd, salt spray hanging in the air as Captain Nathaniel Blackwood stumbled forward, his crew roaring with laughter behind him. The notorious pirate had conquered ships across 7 seas, but today he faced a different challenge, a cruel dare born from a night of rum and reckless boasting. Before him stood Eliza Montgomery, the woman cruelly billed as the fattest woman alive in a traveling spectacle. Her eyes, sharp as cutlasses, met his with unexpected dignity. What began as mockery froze in the throats of onlookers as Eliza's hand rose, not in defense but in calm acceptance of the marriage proposal. What could possibly drive this feared pirate captain to honor such a degrading wager? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the deck of the Siren's Revenge as Captain Nathaniel Blackwood emerged from his quarters, squinting against the harsh light. His head pounded from the previous night's excesses, fragments of memory floating through his mind like driftwood. The death, the wager, the wedding to come. He clutched his tarnished compass, thumb absently tracing the 37 notches carved into its brass case, one for each ship he'd conquered. "Captains, awake, lads," First Mate Jenkins called, his voice carrying across the deck. "Ready to claim your bride?" The crew erupted in raucous laughter, men slapping their thighs and elbowing each other in delight at their captain's predicament. Blackwood silenced them with a glare. "Mind the ship," he growled, stalking to the bow. The salt air did little to clear his head as he stared across Port Royal's harbour, wondering how he'd allowed himself to be maneuvered into such foolishness. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time when Nathaniel Blackwood commanded respect, not mockery. 20 years ago, he was just a scrawny orphan sleeping in the alleys of Bristol, picking pockets to survive. The sea called to him, offered escape. By 16, he'd worked his way up from cabin boy to valued crew member on the merchant vessel Dover's Pride. By 20, he'd taken his first command, by force. The memory still burned bright, Captain Merryweather's shocked expression as young Blackwood led the mutiny, the older man's patronizing smile fading as he realized his protege had outgrown him. "You've the devil's own luck, Nate," were Merryweather's last words before the waves claimed him. Devil's luck indeed. 7 ships, then 12, then 20. The Siren's Revenge earned its fearsome reputation, and Blackwood with it. Naval officers spoke his name in hushed tones. Merchant captains surrendered at the mere sight of his black flag. He'd become legend. Yet lately that legend felt hollow. The thrill of the chase dimmed with each passing year. Gold lost its luster when you'd filled 3 secret caches with it. Even the fear in men's eyes as they surrendered their cargo had become tedious, predictable. Perhaps that's why he tolerated the crew's increasing insolence. Their constant tests of his nerve, their drinking games designed to goad him into ever more outlandish demonstrations of his fearlessness. Like last night's disaster. "A gold sovereign says you wouldn't dare wed the fat lady from Barnett's traveling spectacle," Jenkins had challenged, lips curled in a grin made crooked by an old knife wound. "2 sovereigns say he'd sooner kiss the governor's daughter," countered young Riley, barely old enough to grow proper whiskers. The tavern had grown quiet, all eyes on their captain. Blackwood had tossed back his rum, slammed the glass down. "5 sovereigns say I'll not only wed her, I'll bed her too." The memory made him wince now. He'd been too deep in his cups, too eager to remind them who he was. "Shore boats ready, Captain," called Jenkins, interrupting his thoughts. "Barnett's expecting you at midday. Said he's got the papers drawn up already." More laughter from the crew. Blackwood's fingers tightened around his compass. One twist, and the case opened, revealing the face that had guided him through storm and battle. The needle wavered, unsettled, just like him. "I keep my word," he said, more to himself than to the crew. "Unlike the dogs I command." He descended to the waiting boat, ignoring the jests and catcalls following him. 4 of his men would accompany him as witnesses and to ensure he went through with it. The indignity stung. As they rowed toward shore, Blackwood's thoughts turned to the woman. He'd glimpsed her only once, from a distance, as Barnett paraded his attractions through town to drum up business. The fattest woman alive, the banner had proclaimed. He remembered little beyond her size, certainly nothing of her face or manner. She was merely a prop in this farce, an object of ridicule. Rather like himself now. The boat bumped against the pier. One of his men threw a rope to secure it. "Captain," Jenkins said, failing to hide his smirk, "your bride awaits." Blackwood stepped onto the weathered planks, adjusting his coat, the finest blue broadcloth, gold buttons gleaming. If he was to make a spectacle of himself, he'd at least look the part of the notorious Captain Blackwood. "Let's be done with it," he said, striding forward. Yet with each step toward town, an unfamiliar sensation gnawed at him. It took several moments to recognize it as shame. He who had sent dozens of men to watery graves without remorse, who had relieved countless merchants of their goods, who had burned a naval vessel with all hands rather than risk capture, he now felt the strange discomfort of shame at what awaited him. Not for his own humiliation, but for what he was about to inflict on a woman whose only crime was her appearance. Blackwood paused, compass still in hand. For the first time in many years, he questioned whether he was following the right course. The canvas walls of Eliza Montgomery's private tent fluttered in the morning breeze as she carefully penned another entry in her leather-bound journal. This small book, hidden beneath a loose floorboard when not in use, contained her true self, thoughts, observations, and detailed records of her investments across 3 continents. Today's entry concerned Captain Nathaniel Blackwood. "Mr. Barnett informs me that the notorious pirate has indeed agreed to honor his drunken wager," she wrote in her precise hand. "While the man's intention is mockery, I find myself intrigued by the possibilities this arrangement presents." Eliza closed the journal as heavy footsteps approached. She slid it into its hiding place just as Mr. Barnett barged in without knocking. "There's my golden goose," Barnett exclaimed, his thin face animated with excitement. "Best ticket sales in months. Everyone's coming to see the infamous Captain Blackwood wed my fat lady," he chuckled, tugging at his gaudy waistcoat. "Who'd have thought your enormous girth would attract a genuine pirate?" Eliza kept her expression neutral, accustomed to his cruelty. "Indeed, Mr. Barnett, most unexpected. You'll wear the blue dress. Shows more of you. People are paying to see the spectacle, after all." He paced the small space. "The ceremony's at noon. Don't you dare ruin this with your haughty airs." "As you wish," she replied evenly, hiding her contempt behind practiced docility. When Barnett departed, Eliza allowed herself a small smile. 10 years she'd endured his exploitation, ever since he'd discovered her working as a governess in Boston. Her size had cost her that respectable position. The children's mother couldn't bear the thought of someone so unseemly educating her precious offspring. Barnett had appeared with his offer the very day she was dismissed. At first, the exhibition had seemed her only option, but Eliza was educated, far more than Barnett realized. The daughter of a merchant who'd valued intelligence over appearances, she'd grown up reading his account books alongside her literature and languages. When he died, leaving her nothing but debts and her unusual physique, she'd adapt. From beneath her bed, Eliza retrieved a small wooden box containing her most recent correspondence from Mr. Whitaker, her solicitor in London. Her discreet investments, begun with the meager savings from her exhibition earnings, had flourished over the years. Caribbean sugar plantations, a shipping venture in the colonies, part ownership in a Boston printing house. Barnett had no idea that the woman he paraded as a curiosity now possessed more wealth than he could imagine. Eliza began her preparations, her mind calculating opportunities. This pirate captain might be her chance for freedom. A legal husband would have rights over Barnett where her employment was concerned. If she played this carefully, she might finally escape the canvas prison that had confined her for a decade. Her maid, Jenny, the only person who knew anything of her circumstances, arrived to help her dress. "They say he's killed 100 men," Jenny whispered, eyes wide, "that he drinks blood from a silver chalice." Eliza smiled. "I suspect most tales of Captain Blackwood are greatly exaggerated. But Miss Eliza, what if he's cruel? What if he hurts you? No more cruel than being gawked at daily, I imagine." Eliza winced as Jenny tightened her corset. "Besides, he'll likely abandon me immediately after the ceremony. This is merely a dare, nothing more. Then why agree to it at all?" Eliza's eyes met Jenny's in the small mirror. "Because, dear Jenny, sometimes opportunity wears a strange disguise." As Jenny arranged her hair, Eliza considered what she knew of Blackwood. His reputation was fearsome. Yes, but rumors also suggested he treated his crew fairly and kept his word once given. A man of principle, despite his profession. That might prove useful. Outside, the crowd was gathering. Eliza could hear their eager voices, hungry for amusement at her expense. She was accustomed to such cruelty, had armored herself against it years ago. Today would be no different, except that today might change everything. "It's time, Miss Eliza," Jenny said softly. Eliza stood, smoothing the blue fabric over her substantial form. She had played the docile curiosity for a decade, smiling demurely as strangers pointed and whispered. Today she would play a different role, one that might lead to her freedom. "Remember," she told her reflection, "he sees only what others have always seen. That gives you the advantage." With that thought fortifying her, Eliza Montgomery stepped out to meet her pirate bridegroom, her face composed in its usual mask of quiet dignity, betraying nothing of the calculating mind behind it. The harbor buzzed with excitement as townsfolk gathered along the weathered pier. Children climbed atop barrels for a better view, while merchants abandoned their stalls to witness the spectacle. Word had spread quickly through Port Royal. The feared Captain Blackwood was to wed Barnet's fat lady on a drunken dare. Blackwood arrived first, flanked by 4 of his most intimidating crew members. He cut an imposing figure in his captain's coat, his expression dark as thunderclouds. A path cleared before him, spectators drawn by his notoriety yet wary of standing too close. "Quite the turnout for your nuptials, Captain," Jenkins remarked with poorly concealed amusement. "Nearly as many as came to watch the Henderson hanging last month." Blackwood's hand moved to his cutlass hilt. "Mind your tongue, unless you'd like to lose it." A sudden commotion at the far end and the pier signaled the arrival of the bride's party. Barnet led the procession, resplendent in a garish yellow coat, playing the role of ringmaster to perfection. He waved his walking stick like a conductor's baton, encouraging the crowd's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, witness the most extraordinary wedding in Caribbean history. The fearsome pirate and the largest lady ever to grace our humble port." Behind him walked Eliza Montgomery. The blue dress Barnet had chosen was indeed revealing, cut low to emphasize her substantial bosom, the fabric stretched tight across her form. Yet something in her carriage silenced some of the expected titters. She moved with surprising grace, her gaze straight ahead, face composed in an expression of serene dignity. Blackwood felt an unexpected twist in his gut, something like respect for the way she bore herself amidst the carnival atmosphere. Between bride and groom stood Father Thomas, a port chaplain known for ministering to sailors, regardless of their reputation. His expression conveyed clear disapproval as he clutched his prayer book with white-knuckled hands. "Captain Blackwood," he said in a low voice, "this mockery of a sacred ceremony, 5 guineas for your trouble, Father." Blackwood interrupted, tossing a small pouch that clinked heavily when the chaplain caught it. "Let's be done with it." Father Thomas's protest died as he weighed the unexpected bounty. With a resigned sigh, he opened his book. The ceremony proceeded with a strange tension rippling through the assembled crowd. They had come for comedy but found themselves watching something more complex unfold. The bride spoke her responses clearly, without hesitation, her voice cultured and steady. The groom's responses were gruff but decisive. When Father Thomas instructed them to join hands, Blackwood hesitated a fraction before taking Eliza's in. Her fingers were cool and surprisingly delicate, despite their plumpness. With this ring, Blackwood recited mechanically, sliding a plain gold band onto her finger, the least valuable in his collection, selected for this farce. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Father Thomas concluded with obvious relief. You may kiss the bride, he added, more from habit than expectation. A ripple of anticipatory laughter moved through the crowd. This was the moment they had awaited, the pirate's disgust, the woman's humiliation. Blackwood looked into Eliza's face fully for the first time. Her eyes met his without flinching, intelligent eyes, assessing him coolly. No fear, no pleading, no shame, just calm calculation. He leaned forward and pressed his lips briefly, almost formally, to hers. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some laughed, others seemed disappointed by the anticlimactic moment. Barnett quickly seized control. Celebration feast at the Harbour Tavern. Come see the newlyweds' first meal together. As the crowd began moving toward the promised entertainment, the clerk approached with the marriage certificate. Signatures required, if you please. Eliza signed first, her penmanship elegant and assured. Blackwood scrawled his name beside hers, making their unlikely union official. Well, wife, he said with ironic emphasis, offering his arm as custom dictated. Shall we attend our wedding feast? Indeed, husband, she replied, placing her hand lightly upon his sleeve, though I suspect neither of us will find much appetite for the performance expected of us. Something in her tone, the first hint that she was more than a passive player in this charade, made Blackwood look at her with newfound curiosity. Perhaps, he responded quietly, we might find other hunger more pressing. As they walked toward the tavern, the certificate tucked into Blackwood's coat, neither noticed Father Thomas watching them with an odd expression, as if he had just performed, not a mockery, but a genuine joining of two formidable forces. The wedding feast at the Harbour Tavern was a raucous affair. Blackwood's crew dominated one corner, growing louder with each round of rum. Barnett held court near the center, regaling patrons with exaggerated tales of his attractions. The newlyweds sat at a small table by the window, an uncomfortable island of quiet, amid the celebration of their humiliation. I'll be returning to my ship tonight, Blackwood said after their third uncomfortable silence. Consider our business concluded. Eliza dabbed her lips with a napkin. Actually, Captain, our business is just beginning. She reached into a small reticule and withdrew a folded document. As my lawful husband, you're entitled to certain considerations. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. What game are you playing, woman? No game, merely commerce. She slid the paper across the table. This is the deed to my property, a modest estate on the north side of the island. As my husband, it now falls under your protection. Blackwood unfolded the document skeptically, then froze as he read. The property described was far from modest. 50 acres of prime land, a substantial main house, outbuildings, and even a private dock, deep enough for a ship of considerable draft. This cannot be yours, he scoffed. Verify it if you wish. The solicitor who drew up the papers is Miss Hargrove on High Street. Her composure never faltered. I have additional holdings in Boston and London, though those documents are held in safekeeping elsewhere. Blackwood studied her face for signs of deception, and found none. How does a woman exhibited as a curiosity come to possess such wealth? The same way a man branded a pirate might, through careful planning and a willingness to seize opportunity. She sipped her wine. Mr. Barnett profits from displaying me, but my finances are my own affair. Before Blackwood could respond, Jenkins approached, swaying slightly from drink. Captain, the men are wondering when you'll be abandoning this farce and return into the ship. Eliza raised an eyebrow. My coachman is outside, Captain. Perhaps you'd care to see the estate before making your decision. Your men could accompany us, of course. Jenkins snorted. You expect the captain to? I'll see it, Blackwood interrupted. Something had shifted in his calculation of this strange arrangement. Bring Riley and Cooper. Tell the others to stay clear-headed enough for watch duty. An elegant carriage waited outside, surprisingly well sprung and drawn by matched greys. Barnett watched with evident confusion as Blackwood handed Eliza into it. "What's this, then?" he demanded. "The spectacle isn't finished. It appears my wife has property matters to discuss," Blackwood replied, enjoying the showman's bewilderment. "Matrimonial obligations, you understand." The journey took less than an hour. As they crested a hill, Eliza pointed to the sprawling house below, its windows glowing with lamplight against the darkening sky. A stone building with Georgian proportions, it spoke of permanence and prosperity. "Montgomery Manor," she said simply. Even Jenkins fell silent at the sight. The carriage rolled to a stop before broad steps. The front door opened, and a butler emerged, impeccably dressed, showing no surprise at their arrival. "Welcome home, Mrs. Montgomery," he intoned, "and welcome to your guests." Inside, the evidence of Eliza's wealth became indisputable. Fine furnishings, artwork, a library filled with leather-bound volumes. Servants moved efficiently through the house, all treating Eliza with evident respect. "Your men can be accommodated in the East Wing," she informed Blackwood. "I've taken the liberty of having rooms prepared." "You expected me to come here tonight?" he asked, suspicious again. "I anticipated the possibility." She gestured for a maid to bring refreshments. "A woman in my position learns to prepare for various contingencies." As they settled in a comfortable parlor, Blackwood studied his unlikely bride. In this setting, away from the mockery of the crowd, she carried herself with natural authority. The woman who had stood silent in Barnett's exhibition was gone, replaced by the confident mistress of a substantial estate. "Why did you agree to this marriage?" he finally asked. "You must have known it was meant as ridicule." "Perhaps I saw opportunity where you saw only a jest." She met his gaze directly. "You have a fearsome reputation, Captain, but also one for keeping your word once given. I find myself in need of such a man." "For what purpose?" "Protection, legitimacy, certain legal advantages a husband provides." She smiled slightly. "And in return you gain access to resources you might find useful. A safe harbor, connections in respectable society, considerable wealth." Blackwood leaned back, reassessing everything about the day's events. "It seems, Mrs. Blackwood, that I've underestimated you." "Most men do, Captain. I've counted on it for years." Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows as Blackwood found himself in an unfamiliar study. He had risen early, restless in the comfortable guest chamber Eliza had assigned him. The manor was quiet, servants moving with practiced discretion through the halls. Following his curiosity, he'd discovered this room. Walls lined with bookshelves, a massive oak desk dominating the center, and most surprisingly, an entire wall covered with maps. He stood before them now, examining a detailed chart of Caribbean shipping routes. Small pins marked various locations, some with dates noted beside them. His experienced eye recognized the patterns immediately: merchant vessel schedules, naval patrol routes, optimal interception points. "I see you found my collection." Eliza's voice came from the doorway. Blackwood turned, surprised at how different she appeared in the morning light. Gone was the gaudy blue dress from yesterday. She wore a simple but elegant gown of deep burgundy, her hair arranged practically rather than for display. "These are naval intelligence charts," he said. "Not the sort of thing one finds in a lady's drawing room." "I've never claimed to be an ordinary lady, Captain." She entered, moving to stand beside him. "My father was a merchant captain. He taught me to read these before I learned my letters." Blackwood gestured to a particular notation. "This marks the Spanish treasure fleet's departure date." "Yes, 3 weeks from now." She traced the route with her finger. "They'll pass through this channel at dawn, heavily armed but vulnerable to a small, fast ship approaching from the southeast." He studied her face. "Why would you share such information with me?" "Because information is a commodity, like any other." She moved to the desk, unlocking a drawer with a small key kept at her waist. "And I believe in making sound investment." From the drawer she withdrew more documents. Cargo manifests, shipping schedules, port authority notifications. "How do you come by these?" "I have correspondents in various ports. Harbor masters who appreciate a generous stipend. Clerks who find that copying documents before filing them supplements their income nicely." She arranged the papers methodically. "Mr. Barnett parades me through towns throughout the Caribbean and colonies. People see only what they expect to see, a curiosity, a spectacle. They speak freely in my presence, never considering that I might understand their business, their plans, their vulnerabilities." Blackwood's estimation of her rose further. "You've been conducting intelligence operations while pretending to be nothing more than an exhibition. We all play the roles assigned to us, Captain. Some of us simply play additional roles of our own choosing." A knock at the door interrupted them. Jenkins entered, looking uncomfortable in the refined surroundings. "Begging your pardon, Captain, but the men are wondering about our plans. Cooper's suggesting we take what valuables we can carry and return to the ship." Blackwood noticed Eliza's expression, not fear, but weary resignation, as if she'd expected such treachery. "Tell Cooper that anyone touching my wife's property will answer to me personally." His voice carried the quiet menace that had made hardened sailors tremble. "And remind the men that we are guests here, not raiders." Jenkins looked startled at the rebuke. "Aye, Captain." He glanced at Eliza. "Beg pardon, ma'am. No offense intended." After he departed, Eliza studied Blackwood with new interest. "You surprise me, Captain. As do you, Mrs. Blackwood." He returned to the maps. "You mentioned investment. What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership." She joined him again. "You have a ship and crew. I have information and connections. Together we could be formidable." "You wish to turn pirate, madam?" "I wish to turn profitable, Captain. There's a difference." She pointed to another map. "For instance, I know that Governor Fleming receives substantial bribes from certain merchants to protect their shipments. Those same merchants smuggle contraband among their legitimate cargo. The Crown would pay handsomely for proof. You propose we become privateers. I propose we become whatever serves our mutual interests." Her gaze was direct, businesslike, starting with securing my permanent freedom from Mr. Barnett. Blackwood considered her words. This marriage of convenience was becoming increasingly intriguing. "Join me for breakfast, Captain?" she asked, moving toward the door. "The cook prepares an excellent meal, and we have much to discuss." "Indeed we do," he followed, his mind racing with possibilities. "Tell me, do you always plan so meticulous?" "I've had 10 years with little to do but think, Captain. Planning became my escape long before I met you." As they entered the dining room, Blackwood found himself genuinely smiling for the first time in months. The woman the world mocked for her size had a mind as sharp as any he'd encountered, and perhaps the makings of the most profitable alliance of his career. 3 days had passed since the wedding. Blackwood had moved between the manor and his ship, bringing selected crew members to meet with Eliza, discussing plans that grew more elaborate with each conversation. The mockery that had spawned their union was fading, replaced by a tentative professional respect. When the messenger arrived that morning, Blackwood was in the library with Eliza, examining charts of the eastern shipping lanes. The boy couldn't have been more than 12, his clothes ragged, his manner nervous. "For Captain Blackwood," he said, holding out a sealed letter. "Man at the harbor paid me 6 pence to deliver it." Blackwood flipped the boy an additional coin before breaking the seal. His expression darkened as he read. "What is it?" Eliza asked. Instead of answering, he handed her the letter. The handwriting was bold, slashing across the page. "Nathaniel, word of your recent nuptials has reached me. How amusing that the fearsome Blackwood now plays husband to a circus attraction. Perhaps domesticity has softened you at last. I've taken the liberty of relieving the Siren's revenge of her night watch. You're Mr. Fuller and 2 others. They're enjoying my hospitality aboard the Crimson Dawn. Whether they continue to enjoy it depends entirely on you. I'll be waiting at Murdoch's Point tomorrow at midnight. Come alone, unarmed, if you wish to see your men alive again. An old debt comes due. Captain James Redhaven. Redhaven, Eliza breathed, her complexion paling. He's here? Blackwood's eyes narrowed at her reaction. You know of him? She placed the letter carefully on the table between them. James Redhaven was my father's first mate. After my father died at sea, Redhaven came to our home in Boston, claiming father had promised him my hand in marriage. And had he? Of course not. My father would never have promised me to such a man. Her hands trembled slightly. I refused him. He became insistent. When I continued to refuse, he burned our house to the ground. I barely escaped with my life. Blackwood cursed under his breath. The man has a reputation for obsession. He's pursued me for years after I took a prize he considered his. He'll kill your men regardless of what you do, Eliza said. Redhaven doesn't keep his word. I'm aware of his character. Blackwood paced the room. But I can't abandon my crew, nor should you. She moved to a cabinet, unlocked it, and withdrew a small pistol. But neither should you face him alone. Blackwood raised an eyebrow. You propose to accompany me? I propose we outsmart him. She checked the pistol's loading. Redhaven expects you to come alone out of loyalty to your men. He doesn't know about our arrangement. You're suggesting we use our marriage to advantage? Precisely. She returned to the map table. Murdoch's Point has that narrow approach from the south. If you appear to come alone while I position some of your more trustworthy men here and here, she indicated spots on the chart. Blackwood studied her face. You've thought about confronting Redhaven before. For 10 years, she admitted. He's the reason I agreed to join Barnett's exhibition. I needed to disappear to become someone no one would look at twice, except to mock. Understanding dawned. You used your size as a disguise. The perfect disguise. Who would connect the educated merchant's daughter to the sideshow attraction? Her smile was bitter. Redhaven searched for me in salons and respectable homes. He never thought to look in a traveling spectacle. A commotion outside interrupted them. Through the window they saw Jenkins running toward the house. Blackwood met him at the door. Cap, Jenkins gasped. Siren's been hit. Fuller, Simmons, and young Carter taken. Left this nailed to the mainmast. He thrust forward a scrap of black fabric, a piece torn from a flag bearing a crimson skull. Redhaven's calling card, Blackwood growled. Gather the officers in the dining room. We need to plan. As Jenkins hurried off, Blackwood turned to find Eliza already collecting maps and documents. He'll expect you to be impulsive, she said, to rush in without thinking. As I would have done a week ago, Blackwood acknowledged. But circumstances have changed. Indeed they have, Captain. She met his gaze steadily. Redhaven has made a critical error. He's only expecting to face one enemy. Instead he faces two, Blackwood finished. For the first time he found himself grateful for the drunken dare that had led to this unlikely alliance. Tell me, he asked, did your father teach you strategy along with navigation? My father taught me to use every advantage in a fight, especially when outmatched. Her expression hardened with determination. And being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. The dining room had transformed into a war council. Maps spread across the polished table, weighted at the corners with silver candlesticks. Blackwood's officers, Jenkins, Cooper, Murray and Hawkins, gathered around, their weathered faces serious as they studied the detailed chart of Murdoch's Point that Eliza had provided. The approach is treacherous, Blackwood explained, tracing the narrow channel with his finger. Reefs on both sides, only navigable at high tide, which coincides with the midnight meeting. Perfect spot for an ambush, Murray observed, his Scottish accent thickening with concern. Precisely why Redhaven chose it, Eliza said, entering with a tray of coffee. The officers stiffened slightly at her presence. Though they'd reluctantly accepted her role in planning, old prejudices died hard. With respect, Captain, Cooper said, not looking at Eliza. We're taking the word of a of a woman we barely know. What if it's a trap? Of course, it's a trap, Blackwood replied evenly. Redhaven has always lacked subtlety. The question is how to spring it to our advantage. Eliza set down the tray and joined them at the table. With practiced efficiency, she moved markers representing ships and men. Redhaven will position the Crimson Dawn here. She indicated the deeper water beyond the point. He'll expect Captain Blackwood to approach by rowboat, alone and armed, which I will appear to do, Blackwood added. Meanwhile, Eliza continued, you'll position your fastest longboat with 6 armed men here, hidden in this cove. She placed a marker, and a second group here, among these rocks. When Redhaven reveals himself, we attack from 3 sides, Jenkins finished, newfound respect in his voice. Clever. What about our captured men? Hawkins asked. Redhaven will kill them at the first sign of treachery. He would kill them regardless, Eliza said, but he'll keep them on deck as leverage, which puts them in our sightlines. She withdrew a rolled document from a cabinet and spread it on the table, a detailed schematic of a ship remarkably similar to the Crimson Dawn. Where did you get this? Murray asked. Astonished. Redhaven sailed with my father for years. This was his first command, a brigantine built in Boston. I acquired the builder's plans before leaving the city. A small, satisfied smile touched her lips. Note the aft cabin structure. The support beams are undersized, a flaw in the original design, a weakness. Blackwood understood immediately. A well-placed shot could bring down the entire stern quarter, creating both damage and distraction, Eliza confirmed. Enough confusion for your men to free the prisoners. The officers exchanged glances, clearly reassessing the woman before them. Cooper cleared his throat. Begging your pardon, ma'am. I may have misjudged you. Most people do, Mr. Cooper. Her tone was matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. It's an advantage in situations like this. Blackwood found himself studying his unlikely wife with growing admiration. The mind behind those calm eyes was formidable, strategic, calculating, familiar with both ships and battle tactics. We'll need to coordinate timing precisely, he said, refocusing on the plan. Jenkins, you'll command the longboat. Murray, take the men on the rocks. We'll need signals. 3 short lantern flashes, Eliza suggested. Easily seen but won't alert Redhaven's lookouts if done properly. As they refined the details, the initial awkwardness faded. Eliza's knowledge proved invaluable, her suggestions practical and insightful. By midday, a solid plan had emerged. Rest and prepare. Blackwood ordered as they concluded. We sail at dusk. As the officers filed out, he remained with Eliza, both of them studying the map in contemplative silence. You've done this before, he finally observed. Planned an engagement. Theory only, she admitted. My father believed in educating me as he would a son. We would create strategies for historical naval battles, then compare our plans to what actually happened. And did your strategies succeed? More often than not, she gathered the schematics carefully. Though planning is always easier than execution. You don't have to come tonight, Blackwood said suddenly. You've given us what we need. James Redhaven destroyed my life once, she replied, her voice hardening. I won't allow him to do it again to me or to you. You consider my welfare your concern now. The question held genuine curiosity rather than mockery. We are married, Captain. She met his gaze directly, however unconventional the circumstances. Blackwood found himself smiling, a genuine expression rather than his usual sardonic smirk. Indeed we are, Mrs. Blackwood, and I find myself increasingly grateful for the fact. For the briefest moment a flush colored her cheeks, then her practical nature reasserted itself. We should prepare. Redhaven won't be easily outmaneuvered. No, Blackwood agreed, but he'll face something he doesn't expect. What's that? Us, he indicated the strategy they'd created together. This is our work, not mine alone, and I suspect that makes it more formidable than anything he's prepared for. Sunset bathed the manor in Haddon light, as final preparations for the night's confrontation were underway. Blackwood supervised the loading of weapons while Eliza consulted with Jenkins about the positioning of the longboats. Their plan, meticulous in its details, seemed sound, yet something nagged at the back of Blackwood's mind, a sense that they were missing something crucial. "Captain," Murray called, approaching with a folded paper in hand. "Found this in young Riley's sea chest while gathering ammunition." Blackwood took the paper, unfolded it, and frowned. The message was written in a simple cipher, one used by naval officers, not common sailors. "Bring Riley to the study," he ordered. Quietly, in the privacy of Eliza's book-lined sanctuary, Blackwood placed the paper on the desk. "Can you read this?" She studied it briefly. "It's a basic naval transposition cipher. My father used something similar." Her fingers traced the symbols, translating as she went. "Meeting arranged. Montgomery woman confirmed. Plan proceeds. Payment upon delivery of both targets." Her face paled. "It's dated 3 days ago. After our wedding," Blackwood noted grimly. "Someone knew you were here. Knew we would be together." "Redhaven," she whispered. "He's planned this from the beginning." A knock interrupted them. Murray entered with Riley, a sailor barely 20, with an open face that had previously struck Blackwood as earnest. Now, he saw calculation behind the youth's nervous expression. "Interesting reading material," Blackwood said, gesturing to the decoded message. "Care to explain?" Riley's eyes darted between them, then to the door. "I don't know nothing about that paper." "It was in your sea chest, boy," Murray growled. "Wrapped in your spare shirt. Someone must have planted it there." Riley's protest was too quick, too rehearsed. Blackwood moved with the sudden violence that had earned him his reputation, pinning Riley against the bookshelf, forearm pressed to the young sailor's throat. "The truth," he demanded, "or I'll feed you to the sharks piece by piece." Terror broke through Riley's facade. "It wasn't supposed to hurt nobody," he gasped. "Just information. That's all I was paid for." "Paid by whom?" "A man in Port Royal, works for Captain Redhaven. Said he'd give me 20 guineas just report on your movements." Tears welled in Riley's eyes. "I never told them about the men being taken. I swear it, that wasn't part of the agreement." "What exactly was your agreement?" Eliza asked, her voice controlled despite her evident distress. "Just to confirm when you and the captain were together at the manor." Riley swallowed hard. "And to signal from the ship when the night watch was smallest." "You helped Redhaven take our men," Blackwood growled, pressing harder. "No, I mean I didn't know that's what would happen. I just lit the lamp in the stern cabin at midnight like I was told." Eliza placed a hand on Blackwood's arm. "The attack tonight," she said urgently. "What does Redhaven know of our plans?" Riley's eyes widened. "Nothing about any plans. I haven't been back to town since we came to the manor. Haven't spoken to no—" Blackwood studied the young man's face, searching for deception. "If you're lying, I'm not, Captain. I swear on my mother's grave." Murray cleared his throat. "The boys had no chance to send messages, Captain. We've kept the crew close since discovering the missing men." Blackwood released Riley, who slumped against the bookcase, gasping. "Lock him in the cellar until we return." As Murray led the prisoner away, Eliza retrieved the message. "This changes things. If Redhaven orchestrated our meeting from the beginning, he may know more than we anticipated." Blackwood finished. "Though Riley's betrayal seems limited to the initial stages, we need to adjust our strategy." Eliza moved to the map table with renewed urgency. "Redhaven expects you to come for your men, but he may also be expecting me." "You should remain here," Blackwood said immediately. "If you're his target, if I'm his target, then he'll use your men to draw you into a trap. Then send forces here once you're engaged," she reasoned. "We're safer together." Blackwood considered her logic. "You believe he wants revenge on both of us. I rejected him. You bested him. He's had years to nurture both grudges." She traced a new position on the map, We need to change our approach. Instead of coming from different directions, we should stay together, present a united defense. An unexpected strategy, Blackwood acknowledged. He'll anticipate division, not cooperation. Precise. Her fingers brushed his as they both reached for a map marker. A brief contact that somehow steadied them both. This alliance was his doing, Eliza said with grim satisfaction. Let's ensure he regrets it. Blackwood nodded, something shifting in his understanding of their partnership. What had begun as mockery, evolved to convenience, and grown into respect now faced its first true test. Together then, he agreed, Redhaven won't expect that. Moonlight silvered the waves as Blackwood's longboat sliced through the dark waters toward Murdoch's Point. Against convention and his better judgment, Eliza sat beside him, dressed in men's clothing, breeches and a loose shirt that disguised her figure, her hair tucked beneath a tricorn hat. The 6 crewmen rowing maintained tense silence, broken only by the rhythmic splash of oars. 200 yards, Jenkins whispered from the bow. Crimson Dawns anchored beyond the point, just as expected. Blackwood nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Beside him, Eliza checked the small pistol concealed in her waistband. Their revised plan was risky, presenting themselves together rather than attempting the elaborate 3-pronged attack they'd initially designed. But if Redhaven sought both of them, better to control the confrontation than be hunted separately. Remember, Blackwood murmured to his men, our priority is freeing Fuller and the others. No heroics, and if it's a trap, Captain, Cooper asked quietly. It's definitely a trap, Blackwood replied. The question is whether it's the trap we're expecting. As they rounded the point, the Crimson Dawn came into view, a sleek brigantine with blood-red sails furled tight, skeleton crew visible on deck. A single lantern burned at the stern, a beacon drawing them in. That'll be Redhaven, Eliza whispered tense beside him. He always favored dramatic settings. Blackwood felt her shoulder press against his, a moment of human contact before the coming storm. Strange how natural it felt now, this alliance with a woman he'd married in mockery just days ago. Boat approaching came a shout from the Dawn. Captain says pull alongside. Jenkins guided them to the starboard ladder. Blackwood went up first, then turned to help Eliza, their hands clasping firmly as she ascended to the deck with surprising grace. Gasps and mutters rippled through Redhaven's crew at the sight of them together. Clearly, they'd expected Blackwood alone. At the helm stood Captain James Redhaven himself, tall and lean, with a face that might have been handsome if not for the perpetual sneer that twisted his features. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to jaw, legacy of some past violence. Nathaniel Blackwood, he called, voice dripping with false cordiality. How good of you to accept my invitation. His gaze shifted to Eliza, hardening with recognition. And Eliza Montgomery, or should I say Mrs. Blackwood now? How peculiar that 2 people I've long sought should find each other without my assistance. Blackwood stepped forward, deliberately placing himself slightly before Eliza. Where are my men, Redhaven? Your concern for your crew is touching. Redhaven gestured, and 3 bound figures were dragged forward. Fuller, Simmons and young Carter, bruised but alive. Though I wonder if they appreciate your bringing your bride into danger for their sake. I make my own choices, James, Eliza said, her voice steady despite the tension Blackwood could feel radiating from her. As I did when I refused your proposal years ago. Redhaven's expression darkened. A decision you've had ample time to regret, I imagine, parading yourself as a freak for public amusement. Better an honest exhibition than a false marriage, she replied. You wanted my father's shipping connections, not me. And now you've given them to this pirate instead, Redhaven spat. A man who married you on a drunken dare, who made you the butt of his crew's jokes. Blackwood felt Eliza stiffen beside him. The circumstances of our marriage are our concern, not yours, he said coldly. Release my men, Redhaven laughed. You're hardly in a position to make demands, Nathaniel. I have your men, your ship is undermanned, And now I have you and the woman who should have been mine." The moment hung suspended, Blackwood keenly aware of the crossroads before them. Redhaven clearly expected submission or a futile attack. Instead, Blackwood did something that surprised even himself. He reached for Eliza's hand, entwining his fingers with hers, in a gesture of unified defiance. "You have nothing, James," he said, "and you never will." The signal was subtle, a squeeze of Eliza's hand that she returned before slipping her free hand to her waistband. In one fluid motion, she drew her pistol and fired at the mainmast lantern. Darkness crashed down as the shot found its mark, plunging the deck into confusion. Simultaneously, Blackwood drew his sword and lunged toward the captives, while his crewmen surged up the ladder behind them. "Cut them free," he shouted, engaging the nearest of Redhaven's men. Steel rang against steel as the deck erupted in combat. Eliza moved with unexpected agility, reaching Fuller first and slicing his bonds with a knife from her boot. "Get to the boat," she commanded, pressing the blade into his hands before drawing a second pistol from inside her coat. "Behind you," Blackwood warned, parrying a blow meant for her back. Their eyes met briefly in the chaos, a moment of perfect understanding before they returned to the fight. Redhaven's voice rose above the clash of weapons. "Take them alive. I want them both alive." Dawn crept through the curtains of Montgomery Manor's east bedroom, where Blackwood lay still as Eliza carefully changed the bandage on his shoulder. The blade that had caught him during their escape from the Crimson Dawn had cut deep, the wound angry and red despite her ministrations. "The fever's breaking," she said, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "The herbs are working." Blackwood grunted, the pain evident in his clenched jaw. "Redhaven's men? 2 longboats followed us back to port. Jenkins and Murray led them on a false trail south while we brought you here." She applied a poultice of crushed leaves to the wound. "Cooper reports they've given up the search for now. And our men, Fuller and the others, safely aboard the Siren's Revenge. Cooper has doubled the watch and moved the ship to the hidden cove we discussed." She worked with gentle efficiency, her hands steadier than her voice. "You should rest. You lost a good deal of blood." "We fought well together," he said unexpectedly, watching her face in the soft morning light. "You and I." A small smile touched her lips. "We did. You seemed surprised when I shot out that lantern." "Not surprised. Impressed." He winced as she tightened the bandage. "Where did you learn to handle a pistol?" "My father believed women should be able to defend themselves, particularly at sea." She placed the herbs and bandaging materials back in a small wooden box, inlaid with mother of pearl. "He taught me to shoot when I was 12. Silence fell between them, comfortable rather than strained. Through the window came the distant sound of waves against the shore. "I didn't expect this," Blackwood finally said. "The ambush? We knew Redhaven would." "No, this." He gestured between them with his good arm. "This alliance. When I accepted that ridiculous dare, I never imagined that I would be more than an object of ridicule." Her tone was matter-of-fact rather than bitter. "That I would find a partner," he corrected. "Someone who thinks as I do, who fights at my side without hesitation." He met her gaze directly. "Someone I've come to respect." Color rose in her cheeks, but she held his gaze. "Necessity makes for strange bedfellows, Captain." "Does it?" He caught her hand as she moved to rise. "Is that all this is? Necessity?" The question hung between them, disrupting the careful boundaries they'd established. "I should check on your crew," she said, gently withdrawing her hand. "They've been concerned for you." As she reached the door, Blackwood called after her. "Eliza." She turned, one eyebrow raised. "Thank you for everything." Her expression softened. "Rest, Captain. We'll talk more when you're stronger." Left alone, Blackwood stared at the ceiling, sorting through memories of the past week, the mockery of their wedding, his discovery of her true nature, their seamless cooperation during the battle. Somewhere amid the chaos, his perception of her had fundamentally changed. The woman the world mocked for her size had proven herself his equal in courage and intellect. When he next woke, the room was bathed in late afternoon light. Eliza sat in a chair by the window, reading. She looked up as he stirred. "How long have I been asleep?" he asked, his voice rough. "Several hours." She brought him water. "Your fever's gone. That's promising." As he drank, he noticed a delicate silver chain around her neck, partially hidden by her collar, something he hadn't seen her wear before. "My mother's locket," she explained, following his gaze. She drew it out to show him. "I kept it hidden all these years. It's the only thing I managed to save when Redhaven burned our house." "May I?" he asked. When she nodded, he opened the small oval case to find a miniature portrait of a woman with Eliza's eyes and a kinder version of her determined mouth. "You resemble her," he observed. "She was considered a great beauty in her day." Eliza's smile held a hint of old sadness. "I inherited my father's build instead." "Your father must have been an extraordinary man." "He was." She reclaimed the locket, her fingers brushing his. "Strong, brilliant, kind, everything Redhaven pretended to be. Is that why Redhaven wanted you? To possess something of your father's?" "That, and my inheritance. Father left everything to me, including his shipping contacts." She returned to her chair. "When I refused Redhaven, he couldn't bear the rejection. He's a man who believes he deserves whatever he desires. Men like that are dangerous." Blackwood said, "Yes." She looked out the window, her expression distant. "He won't stop, you know. Last night was only the beginning." "I know." Blackwood pushed himself to a sitting position, wincing at the pain. "But neither will we." Their eyes met across the room, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Whatever had begun as mockery had been forged in fire into something stronger, an alliance neither had sought, but both now valued. "Together, then," Eliza said softly. "Together," Blackwood agreed, surprised by how right the word felt on his lips. A week after the confrontation at Murdoch's Point, an unexpected messenger arrived at Montgomery Manor, bearing an envelope sealed with the governor's own wax crest. Eliza accepted it with raised eyebrows, breaking the seal as Blackwood watched from the study doorway, his arm still in a sling but otherwise recovered. "It appears we've been invited to Governor Worthington's spring ball," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "This Saturday evening." Blackwood crossed to read over her shoulder. The invitation was addressed to Captain and Mrs. Nathaniel Blackwood, the formal acknowledgement of their marriage somewhat startling after the circumstances of its beginning. "Interesting timing," he remarked. "The governor rarely invites those of my profession to his gatherings. He invites wealthy merchants and landowners," Eliza pointed out, "which, legally speaking, you now are through our marriage." Blackwood took the invitation, studying it thoughtfully. "Redhaven will know of this. He has informants throughout the island. Precisely why we should attend." She took the paper back, her fingers brushing his. "Public appearances establish legitimacy, and the governor's ball is neutral ground. Even Redhaven wouldn't dare create a scene there. You want to use this as strategy." Blackwood seemed amused by the idea. "Everything is strategy, Captain." She smoothed the invitation carefully. "Besides, if Redhaven has spies at the ball, perhaps we might identify them." Later that evening, as Blackwood joined Eliza for their now customary after-dinner discussion in the library, he found her surrounded by fabric samples and fashion plates. "I've ordered a new gown," she explained, somewhat self-consciously. "My exhibition wardrobe is hardly suitable for a governor's ball." "I've never attended such an event," Blackwood admitted. "Naval balls during my merchant days, yes, but nothing so formal." "Then we shall be fish out of water together." She offered a smile that transformed her face, softening the practical intelligence that usually defined her expression. "Though I suspect you clean up rather well, Captain. And you," he said with unexpected gentleness, "will outshine every woman there." The flush that rose to her cheeks made her look younger, almost girlish despite her size. For a moment, Blackwood glimpsed the woman she might have been without Redhaven's cruelty and Barnett's exploitation. Saturday evening arrived with a flurry of activity. Blackwood, dressed in a new coat of midnight blue with silver buttons, a gift from Eliza that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, waited at the foot of the grand staircase. Jenkins and Cooper, similarly attired though less elegantly, would accompany them as protection disguised as footmen. "The carriage is ready, Captain," Jenkins reported, tugging uncomfortably at his collar. "Captain," came Eliza's voice from above. Blackwood turned and felt an unexpected tightening in his chest. Eliza descended the stairs in a gown of deep emerald silk, the cut cleverly designed to complement her figure rather than disguise it. Her hair was arranged in an elegant style that softened her features, and at her throat gleamed her mother's locket, alongside a small pendant of sea-green stone. "You look—" Blackwood searched for the right words. "Magnificent. Thank you." She reached the bottom step, now at eye level with him. "The stone is aquamarine. It matches your eyes. I thought we should coordinate." He offered his arm, suddenly conscious of the domestic picture they presented, so at odds with the circumstances that had brought them together. "Ready to scandalize Port Royal society, Mrs. Blackwood?" "Absolutely, Captain Blackwood." Her smile held a hint of mischief. "Though I suspect they'll be more scandalized by how well we suit each other than by anything else." The governor's mansion blazed with light, carriages lined up along the curved drive as the island's elite arrived in their finery. As Blackwood handed Eliza down from their carriage, he noted the curious glances, the whispered comments behind fans and raised hands. "They're talking about us," he murmured. "They always talk about me," she replied even. "The difference is, tonight they'll see me as someone worthy of their attention rather than their ridicule." Governor Worthington himself greeted them at the entrance, a portly man with shrewd eyes that assessed Blackwood carefully. "Captain Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood, a pleasure to welcome you." His tone was cordial, if reserved. "I understand congratulations are in order on your recent nuptials." "Thank you, Governor." Eliza replied smoothly. "We're honored by your invitation." As they moved into the ballroom, the crowd parted subtly, creating a path and a spectacle simultaneously. Blackwood felt Eliza's hand tighten on his arm. "Courage," he whispered. "We've faced worse than Port Royal gossips." Her answering smile was genuine. "Indeed we have, Captain. Indeed we have." The orchestra struck up a waltz. Without hesitation, Blackwood turned to his wife and bowed formally. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Blackwood?" Surprise flashed across her face, followed by something warmer. "You dance, Captain." "Poorly," he admitted with a roguish grin, but with enthusiasm. As he led her onto the floor, the whispers around them intensified. But when he took her in his arms, something shifted in the atmosphere, the expected mockery giving way to something like curiosity, as they moved together with surprising grace. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight as the carriage rolled to a stop before Montgomery Manor. The ball had been a triumph of sorts, initial whispers and stares giving way to genuine interest as the evening progressed. Several of the governor's associates had engaged Blackwood in serious conversation about shipping routes, while Eliza had been drawn into discussion with the wives of prominent merchants who found her knowledge of Boston society both surprising and impressive. "I believe we confounded their expectations," Eliza remarked as Blackwood helped her from the carriage. "Spectacularly so," he agreed, dismissing Jenkins and Cooper with a nod. "Did you see Lady Pembroke's face when you corrected her about the Boston Tea Party?" Eliza laughed, a genuine sound he'd heard rarely from her. "I thought she might swallow her pearls." Inside, the house was quiet. Most of the servants retired for the night. Only Wilson, the butler, waited to take their wraps. "Would you care for a nightcap, Captain?" Eliza asked as they reached the landing where their separate bedchambers lay in opposite directions. Blackwood hesitated, then nodded. "I find I'm not quite ready for sleep." In the library, Eliza retrieved a dusty bottle from a cabinet. "My father's private reserve. Madeira, I've been saving it for an occasion that felt significant." "And tonight qualifies?" Blackwood asked, watching as she poured amber liquid into crystal glasses. "Tonight we face the world as equals," she said simply. Not as a pirate and his sideshow wife, but as Captain and Mrs. Blackwood. That seems worthy of celebration. She handed him a glass, then settled into one of the leather chairs before the hearth, where embers still glowed. Blackwood took the opposite chair, swirling the wine before taking a sip. The flavor was rich, complex with age. To unexpected alliances, he offered, raising his glass. To surprising outcomes, she countered, touching her glass to his. Silence fell between them, comfortable rather than awkward. The tensions of the past weeks, Redhaven's attack, Blackwood's recovery, their preparations for the ball seemed to recede, leaving space for quieter reflection. "May I ask you something?" Blackwood said finally. "Something personal." Eliza nodded, her face softened by firelight. "In all these years hiding from Redhaven, enduring Barnett's exhibition, were you never tempted to simply leave? Take your wealth and build a new life elsewhere?" She considered the question, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "Of course, many times. But Redhaven had connections everywhere a woman might reasonably travel alone, and I had unfinished business. My father's name to clear, his legacy to reclaim. Your father was accused of something, smuggling." Her expression darkened. "Redhaven planted evidence among his cargo after his death. The authorities seized much of our legitimate business, which is why I was left with so little initially. It's taken years to rebuild, to gather evidence of what really happened. And now I have most of what I need: documents, witness statements, shipping records that prove that contraband wasn't loaded until after my father's death." She took another sip of wine. "But Redhaven still has powerful friends in Boston. I needed someone equally powerful in my corner." Understanding dawned. "So our marriage of convenience offered more than just freedom from Barnett." She met his eyes directly. "Your reputation, fearsome as it is, provides a certain protection, and your connections in less official circles give me access to information I couldn't obtain through legitimate channels." "You've been playing a long game," Blackwood observed, impressed rather than offended. "Survival often requires it." She looked away, though I never anticipated how our arrangement would evolve. The air between them thickened with unspoken implications. Blackwood set his glass down and leaned forward. "And how has it evolved, Eliza?" She met his gaze again, something vulnerable in her expression. "You were supposed to be a means to an end, a necessary alliance. Nothing more. And now I find myself conflicted." Her hand trembled slightly as she set her own glass aside. "These past weeks, working together, planning together, it's awakened something I thought dead, something I walled away after Redhaven's betrayal. Trust," Blackwood suggested softly. "More than trust." The confession seemed to cost her. Desire, not just for safety or vengeance, but for companionship, for understanding. She took a deep breath. "For you." The fire popped in the silence that followed, sending sparks up the chimney. "I never expected this either," Blackwood admitted finally. "When I accepted that drunken dare, it was about pride, not connection. Certainly not about finding someone who would challenge me, match me, make me question everything I thought I knew about myself." "And what do you know now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Blackwood rose from his chair and knelt before hers, taking her hands in his. "That what began in mockery has become the most honest thing in my life. That I would face Redhaven and 100 men like him to keep you safe. That the vows I spoke as a jest have become a promise I intend to keep." He brought her hand to his lips, a gesture of reverence rather than obligation. "If you'll have me, not as a necessary alliance, but as a true husband." Eliza's free hand moved to cup his cheek. "I believe, Captain Blackwood, that I would have no other." Morning sunlight streamed through the library windows, where Blackwood and Eliza had fallen asleep in their chairs, hands still loosely clasped between them. The empty Madeira bottles stood on the table alongside their glasses, witnesses to the night's confession. The sound of urgent footsteps in the hall woke them. Jenkins appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Begging your pardon, Captain, ma'am," he said, glancing between them. "There's trouble at the ship." Blackwood was instantly alert. "What kind of trouble?" "Murray caught someone going through your charts, sir. One of our own." "Who?" Blackwood demanded, rising. "Carter." Eliza stood as well, straightening her rumpled ball gown. "The young man you rescued from Redhaven." Jenkins nodded. "Murray found him copying information about our planned course to Nassau. When confronted, he tried to escape. He's locked in the hold now." "Have the carriage brought round," Blackwood ordered. "We'll go immediately." Within the hour they stood aboard the Siren's Revenge. The ship rocked gently at anchor in the hidden cove, a skeleton crew maintaining watch while the rest remained at the manor for security. Murray met them at the gangplank. "He had this on him, Cap'n." He held out a folded paper. "It's a naval commission, signed by the governor of Massachusetts, year-old, by the date." Blackwood unfolded the document. The commission was indeed official, appointing one Thomas Carter as an agent of the Crown, tasked with gathering intelligence on pirate activities in the Caribbean. "A spy," Blackwood said flatly. "Right under our noses." "Worse," Eliza added, reading over his shoulder. "Look at the authorizing signature." There, below the governor's ornate scrawl, was a counter-signature as witness. "Captain James Redhaven, Naval Intelligence. Redhaven is working for the Crown?" Jenkins asked incredulous. "When it suits him," Blackwood replied grimly. "He's played both sides for years, pirate when profitable, naval informant when needing protection. Bring Carter up," he ordered. "I want to hear what he has to say." The young sailor they'd rescued from Redhaven's ship was brought before them, his wrists bound, his youthful face a mask of defiance, rather than fear. "How long have you been Redhaven's man?" Blackwood asked, without preamble. "I'm not Redhaven's man," Carter replied. "I'm a Crown agent. My assignment was to infiltrate pirate crews operating in these waters." "By allowing yourself to be captured by Redhaven," Eliza surmised, "then rescued by Captain Blackwood." Carter's eyes narrowed at her insight. "I serve the king, ma'am, nothing more." "And yet you were copying our charts for Redhaven," Blackwood observed. "Curious behavior for a loyal Crown agent." Carter's composure slipped. "You don't understand. Redhaven has information evidence that could clear my father's name. He was accused of embezzling from the Royal Navy's funds." Eliza and Blackwood exchanged glances, the parallel to her own father's situation unmistakable, and Redhaven promised to provide this evidence in exchange for information about us, Blackwood guessed. Carter nodded miserably. "He said he only wanted to know your movements, your plans, that no harm would come to anyone. Just as he told young Riley." Murray growled. "The man spins the same web for different flies." Blackwood paced the deck, considering the torn commission, the desperate young man before him, Eliza's thoughtful expression, all pieces of a complex puzzle. "Do you believe he actually has this evidence?" he asked Carter. "I've seen a portion of it, enough to suggest my father was framed by his commanding officer. And in return, you were to report on our defenses, our course to Nassau." Blackwood's voice hardened. "Did you consider that Redhaven might use this information to attack us, to kill the very people who rescued you?" Shame colored Carter's face. I convinced myself he only wanted to avoid you, that he wouldn't risk a direct confrontation." "A convenient belief," Eliza said, her tone surprisingly gentle. "When we desperately want something, we often blind ourselves to the cost." She turned to Blackwood, speaking low. "He's being used, just as I was. Redhaven finds people's weaknesses, their desperate hopes, and exploits them." Blackwood nodded, then addressed Carter again. "The evidence Redhaven promises, do you know where he keeps it?" "In his cabin aboard the Crimson Dawn, a hidden compartment beneath the chart table. Along with evidence against my father, I suspect," Eliza added, "and others he's blackmailed over the years." Blackwood's expression became calculating. "Which means if we could access that compartment, we could free not just ourselves but everyone in his web." Eliza finished. They moved away from Carter to confer privately, joined by Jenkins and Murray. It could be another trap, Jenkins warned. Almost certainly, Blackwood agreed, but also an opportunity. If Redhaven truly keeps such evidence aboard his ship there, we need a plan to get aboard the Dawn undetected, Eliza said. And what about him? Murray jerked his head toward Carter. Blackwood studied the young spy thoughtfully. He stays confined, but treated well. He's a pawn in Redhaven's game, not the architect of it. You're showing mercy, Captain. Jenkins seemed surprised. No, Blackwood replied. Strategy. Carter may yet prove useful. He glanced at Eliza, who nodded in agreement. After all, Redhaven is expecting information from him. Perhaps we should ensure he receives exactly what we want him to know. The tavern on the eastern edge of Port Royal was known for its discretion and its clientele of dubious character. In a corner booth, young Carter sat hunched over a tankard, his eyes darting nervously to the door each time it opened. The information Blackwood had instructed him to pass, falsified charts showing the Siren's Revenge would sail at dawn for Nassau, had been carefully crafted to draw Redhaven into their trap. When the tavern door swung open to admit a tall figure in a naval coat, Carter stiffened. Not Redhaven himself, but his first mate, Harrison. "You're late," Harrison growled, sliding into the seat opposite. "I had difficulty getting away," Carter replied, following the script Blackwood had prepared. "The watch has been doubled since you took Fuller and the others." Harrison snorted. "And yet here you are. You have the information." Carter slid a folded paper across the table. "They sail at dawn tomorrow. Blackwood's taking his wife aboard. Says it's safer than leaving her at the manor while he's gone." Harrison's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Both of them on the ship, eh? The captain will be pleased." He pocketed the paper without examining it. "Any other news?" "They suspect a traitor, but they're watching Riley, not me." Carter feigned nervous pride at his deception. "They trust me because Blackwood rescued me from your ship." "Clever lad." Harrison tossed a small pouch on the table. "Your payment. The captain says to tell you he'll have the documents you want once Blackwood and the woman are dealt with." As Harrison departed, Carter slumped with genuine relief. The first part of their plan had worked. The false information was delivered. The bait taken. Back at Montgomery Manor, Blackwood and Eliza waited in the study, surrounded by maps and weapons. Jenkins entered with a nod. Carter's returned. "Says Harrison took the information without question." "Good," Blackwood said. "Then Redhaven will expect us to sail at dawn, both of us aboard the Siren's Revenge, while in fact we'll be paying a visit to the unguarded Crimson Dawn." Eliza added, tracing the harbor's outline on the map before her. "Not entirely unguarded," Murray cautioned from the doorway. "My sources say Redhaven keeps at least 10 men aboard at all times." "10 men we can handle," Blackwood replied, "especially with the element of surprise." He turned to Jenkins. "How many can we trust?" "Absolutely. 8, including myself and Murray." Jenkins's scarred face was grim. "After Riley and Carter, I'm not taking chances. 8 is sufficient." Blackwood indicated positions on the harbor chart. 2 longboats approaching from opposite sides in the darkest hour before dawn. "Murray, you'll lead the diversion here at the bow. Jenkins, you'll come with Eliza and me to access Redhaven's cabin." As the final details were arranged and the men dismissed to prepare, Eliza remained at the map table, her expression troubled. "What is it?" Blackwood asked when they were alone. "This feels too easy," she admitted. "Redhaven is cruel and obsessed, but he's not a fool. What if he's anticipated our counter-move?" Blackwood considered this. "Then we prepare for that possibility as well. If it appears to be a trap, we withdraw immediately. And if we succeed, if we find the evidence, then we use it to clear your father's name, to free Carter's father, to break Redhaven's power over all those he's manipulated." He covered her hand with his, "and to ensure our future together." Their eyes met. The connection between them no longer just alliance, but something deeper. "I never thought to have this," she said softly. "Someone who fights at my side rather than seeing me as a burden. "You are many things, Eliza Blackwood," he replied, "but never a burden." In the darkest hour of night, two longboats slipped silently across the harbor waters toward the anchored crimson dawn. The ship's silhouette was black against the star-filled sky, only a single lantern visible at the stern. Blackwood led the first boat, Eliza beside him, while Murray commanded the second. Each carried 4 armed men, moving with the precision born of careful planning. As they neared the vessel, Blackwood raised a hand, signaling Murray's boat to circle toward the bow. Their own craft continued toward the stern, where a rope ladder hung just above the waterline, standard practice for crew returning from shore leave and their expected point of entry. Jenkins went first, climbing with silent agility despite his bulk. Blackwood followed, then turned to help Eliza, whose men's clothing allowed her to ascend with surprising ease. The remaining men came after, each armed with a pistol and cutlass. On deck they encountered their first sentry, a bearded sailor dozing at his post. Jenkins subdued him with a swift blow before he could raise the alarm. The man was bound and gagged, then hidden behind a stack of barrels. They moved toward the stern cabin, Jenkins taking the lead while Blackwood and Eliza followed. From the bow came the sudden shout and clash of steel that signaled Murray's diversion had begun. Right on schedule, as they reached the cabin door, Blackwood drew his pistol. "Ready?" Eliza nodded, her own smaller weapon steady in her hand. Jenkins kicked the door open, and they rushed inside, only to find the cabin empty, the chart table bare of maps or instruments. "It's a trap," Eliza whispered, just as the door slammed shut behind them. Outside, the sounds of fighting intensified. Through the window, Blackwood caught a glimpse of Murray's men, overwhelmed by a force far larger than the expected 10-man skeleton crew. "Redhaven knew we were coming," he said grimly. "He's been waiting for us." As if summoned by his name, Redhaven's voice came from the deck outside, amplified by a speaking trumpet. "Captain Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood, how kind of you to accept my invitation. I do hope you're comfortable in my cabin. You'll be spending your last moments there together." Trapped in Redhaven's cabin, Blackwood and Eliza moved with the synchronized efficiency of partners who had learned to anticipate each other's actions. While he barricaded the door with a heavy sea chest, she examined the windows and walls for possible escape routes. "The chart table," she whispered, running her hands along its edges. Carter said there was a hidden compartment. Blackwood joined her, fingers probing the ornate wooden surface. There must be a mechanism, a release catch of some kind. Outside, the clash of steel intensified. Through the windows they glimpsed Murray and his men fighting desperately against overwhelming odds, while Redhaven's voice continued taunting them through the speaking trumpet. "I've prepared something special for you both," he called. "A lover's pyre. Once my men secure the deck, we'll set the ship ablaze with you inside." Poetic, wouldn't you say? Eliza's fingers found a small indentation beneath the table's edge. She pressed it, and a panel in the tabletop slid open, revealing a shallow compartment filled with documents. Here, she grabbed the papers, quickly sorting through them. Letters, shipping manifests, falsified evidence. "This is it, Nathaniel. Everything we need." Blackwood helped her gather the documents, stuffing them inside her coat. "Now we just need to get out of here alive to use them." A crash against the door indicated Redhaven's men had begun their assault on their barricade. The sea chest shifted ominously. "The windows are too small for me," Eliza said, frustration edging her voice. "And even if I could fit, there's 20 feet of open water below." Blackwood scanned the cabin with the practiced eye of a man accustomed to finding escape routes. His gaze settled on a small hatch in the ceiling, an air vent leading to the upper deck. "There," he pointed. "It's narrow, but it might be our only chance." Working quickly, they pushed the chart table beneath the hatch. Blackwood climbed up and forced the covering open, then turned to help Eliza. "You go first," he insisted. "I'll follow once you're through." She shook her head. "You know I won't fit. The space is too small for someone of my size." The door splintered as Redhaven's men redoubled their efforts to break through. Time was running out. "Go," Eliza urged, pressing her pistol into his hand. "Take the documents. Make sure Redhaven pays for everything he's done." "I'm not leaving you," Blackwood growled, jumping down beside her. "Don't be a fool. One of us must survive to expose him." Her eyes held his, fierce with determination. "I've spent 10 years hiding from that man. I won't spend my last moments cowering in fear of him." The barricade gave way with a final crack, the door bursting open to admit Harrison and 2 armed sailors. Without hesitation, Eliza grabbed a heavy brass compass from the table and hurled it at the first man, catching him squarely between the eyes. Blackwood fired her pistol at Harrison, who dodged but not quickly enough to avoid a grazing wound to his shoulder. The momentary confusion gave them the advantage they needed. Blackwood seized a chair and smashed it against the second sailor, while Eliza grabbed a chartweight and brought it down on Harrison's already injured arm with surprising force, causing him to drop his weapon with a howl of pain. Together they fought their way onto the deck, where the battle still raged. Murray had fallen, blood streaming from a wound to his leg, but 3 of his men continued fighting, their backs to the mainmast. On the quarterdeck stood Redhaven himself, sword in hand, a triumphant smile spreading across his scarred face as he spotted them. "How touching," he called, descending toward them. The pirate and his pet mountain making their last stand together. Blackwood drew his sword, positioning himself protectively before Eliza. "It's over, Redhaven. We have the evidence of your crimes. Evidence that will burn with you." Redhaven sneered, lunging forward. Steel met steel as the captains engaged, their blades flashing in the pre-dawn light. Blackwood fought with cold precision, each move calculated to keep Redhaven's attention fixed on him and away from Eliza. Behind them, Harrison had recovered and was circling toward Eliza, a wicked knife drawn. She backed toward the rail, seemingly cornered, until her hand closed around a belaying pin left on the gunwale. As Harrison rushed her, she swung with all her considerable strength, catching him across the temple. He crumpled to the deck, unconscious or worse. "Your loyal dog seems to have fallen," she called to Redhaven, whose momentary distraction at her words gave Blackwood the opening he needed. His blade sliced across Redhaven's sword arm, drawing first blood. Redhaven cursed, switching his weapon to his left hand with practiced ease. "I've waited years for this," he snarled, renewing his attack with savage intensity. The fight drove them across the deck, past struggling knots of combatants. Blackwood found himself pressed back toward the starboard rail, Redhaven's unexpected left-handed skill temporarily giving him the advantage. "Nathaniel," Eliza's warning came just as Redhaven lunged for a killing thrust. Blackwood twisted, the blade missing his heart but sinking deep into his shoulder, the same one recently healed from their previous encounter. Pain exploded through him, nearly causing him to drop his sword. Seeing his advantage, Redhaven drew back for a final strike, only to stagger as something massive slammed into him from behind. Eliza had charged, using her substantial weight as a battering ram, sending Redhaven crashing into the rail. Wood splintered under the impact. The weakened railing gave way, and with a cry of surprise, Redhaven toppled backward over the side. But even as he fell, his hand shot out, catching Blackwood's injured arm and pulling him toward the broken rail. Sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, painting golden stripes across the bed where Blackwood lay motionless. 3 days had passed since the battle aboard the Crimson Dawn. 3 days since Eliza had grabbed his collar as he teetered at the broken rail, her strength the only thing that kept him from following Redhaven into the dark waters below. 3 days of fever and delirium as the physician worked to save his twice-wounded shoulder. Eliza had not left his side. She dozed now in a chair pulled close to the bed, her head resting awkwardly against the high back, dark circles beneath her eyes testifying to her vigilance. On the bedside table lay a blood-stained gold band, his wedding ring which had caught Redhaven's blade and diverted it just enough to spare Blackwood's heart. His fingers twitched, then moved to cover hers where they lay on the coverlet. Her eyes opened instant. "Nathaniel," she whispered, leaning forward to press a cool palm to his forehead. "The fever's broken." He tried to speak, his throat parched from days without use. She helped him sip water, supporting his head with gentle hands. "Redhaven?" he finally managed. "Gone," she confirmed. "They found his body washed up on the eastern shore yesterday. Harrison and 3 others are in custody. The governor was most interested in the evidence we recovered." Blackwood attempted to sit up, wincing as pain lanced through his shoulder. "Murray will recover, though he'll walk with a limp. We lost Cooper and young Fletcher." Sadness clouded her face. "Jenkins is acting as captain of the Siren's Revenge until you're well enough to resume command." He nodded, processing this information. "And Carter, released with the governor's apology. The documents we found included proof of his father's innocence." She squeezed his hand, "as well as evidence clearing my father's name. It's over, Nathaniel. Truly, oh." Relief washed through him, followed by a deeper, more complex emotion as he studied her face, tired but radiant, with quiet joy. "You saved my life, as you've saved mine, in more ways than one." Her smile softened the practical lines of her face, revealing the woman beneath the strategist. "It seems we make quite the team, Captain Blackwood." "Indeed we do, Mrs. Blackwood." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Though I find myself wondering what happens now that our mutual enemy is defeated." Something vulnerable flickered in her eyes. "That depends on whether our alliance remains necessary." "Necessary?" He reached up to touch her cheek, his thumb tracing the curve where fatigue had hollowed it. "I think we've moved well beyond necessity, Eliza." A week later, Blackwood stood on the veranda of Montgomery Manor, his arm in a sling but his strength returning daily. Before him lay a map spread across a table, not of shipping routes or battle plans, but of the Caribbean islands and North American coast. "The governor has officially pardoned you," Eliza said, joining him with a pot of tea. "In exchange for the evidence against Redhaven and your agreement to cease unauthorized acquisitions from merchant vessels. A diplomatic way of ending my piracy career," Blackwood observed wryly. "He's also offered you a position special advisor on maritime security. Apparently your knowledge of how ships are taken can help prevent future incidents." Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "A poacher turned gamekeeper, with a substantial salary and official standing in society." She poured 2 cups of tea. "I've also received an offer to sell my story to Mr. Barnett's competitors. They seem to think The Pirate's Bride would make a popular exhibition." "Tell me you refused." Instantly, she handed him a cup. "Though I did accept a different proposal from the governor's wife. She's asked me to join the committee planning the midsummer charity ball." Blackwood nearly choked on his tea. "Society matrons seeking your advice on social events. The world has indeed turned upside down." "Not entirely." Her smile held a hint of mischief. "They still whisper behind their fans, but now it's with speculation about how the fearsome Captain Blackwood was tamed by his clever wife, rather than mockery of my size." He set down his cup and moved to stand behind her, his good arm encircling her waist. "I'm hardly tamed." "No?" She leaned back against his chest. "Then why are you studying maps of peaceful coastlines instead of plotting your next raid?" "Perhaps I'm plotting something else entirely." He nodded toward the map, where several locations had been circled. Bermuda, Charleston, Boston, all places where a respectable merchant with a shrewd wife might establish legitimate business ventures. She turned in his embrace, searching his face. "You're serious?" "Deadly so." His expression softened. "The Siren's Revenge can be refitted as a merchant vessel, my men retrained as honest sailors. A new flag, a new purpose. And what of Captain Blackwood, the terror of the Caribbean? He'll become Nathan Blackwood, merchant captain and devoted husband." His hand moved to trace the curve of her cheek. "If his wife approves of such a transformation." Eliza's eyes shone with unexpected tears. "You would do this? Change your entire life?" "I already have." He brushed away a tear that escaped down her cheek. "From the moment you took my hand on that pier, though neither of us knew it then, I never dared hope for this, she confessed. A true partnership. A future, not built on revenge or necessity. Hope it, believe it, help me build it. He drew her closer, mindful of his injured shoulder. We began with a mockery of marriage. Let's create something real in its place. She reached up to touch his face, her expression one of wonder and determination. We already have, Nathaniel, we already have. The chapel overlooking Port Royal Harbour bore little resemblance to the weathered pier where Blackwood and Eliza had first exchanged vows 3 months earlier. Flowers adorned every surface, their fragrance mingling with salt air through open windows. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, casting jewel-toned patterns across the stone floor. In the vestry, Eliza stood before a looking-glass, hardly recognizing the woman reflected there. Gone was the exhibition costume, the practical men's clothing she'd worn for their adventures, the simple dresses of her daily life at the manor. In their place, a gown of ivory silk embraced her figure without apology or disguise, embroidered with subtle patterns of waves and seafaring birds, a design of her own creation that celebrated rather than concealed her form. "You look magnificent," came a voice from the doorway. Eliza turned to find Jenkins, resplendent in a new coat and recently trimmed beard, watching her with undisguised admiration. "The captain's a fortunate man," he added gruffly, "though I expect he knows it." "As am I fortunate," she replied, straightening the lace at her wrists. "Is everything prepared?" Jenkins nodded. "The men are assembled and on their best behavior, though I can't promise they won't cheer inappropriately loud when you appear. They've grown quite fond of their captain's lady these past months." A knock at the outer door interrupted them. Jenkins answered it, returning with a small package. "From the captain," he explained, handing it to Eliza. Inside lay a velvet pouch containing a ring, not the plain gold band from their first ceremony, but a band of platinum set with small diamonds and sapphires that caught the light like stars on water. A note accompanied it in Blackwood's bold handwriting, "For our true beginning. Today and always your Nathaniel." Eliza slipped the ring onto her finger alongside her original wedding band. The two metals, one tarnished with history, one bright with promise, complementing each other perfectly. "Tell the captain I'm ready," she said, gathering her bouquet of white roses and sea lavender. In the chapel, Blackwood waited at the altar, his restored health evident in his straight posture and clear gaze. His midnight blue coat set off newly silvered temples, legacy of his near-death experience that lent him an air of distinguished gravity. Behind him stood Murray, recovered from his wounds though leaning slightly on a polished cane, serving as best man. The small congregation represented their unique journey, Blackwood's loyal crew sitting alongside members of Port Royal's Merchant Society, Carter and his recently exonerated father, even Miss Barnett, who had finally relinquished his exhibition rights to Eliza in exchange for a generous settlement. When the chapel doors opened and Eliza appeared on Jenkins' arm, her chosen escort in place of the father long lost, Blackwood felt his breath catch. No longer the reluctant bride of a cruel dare, she moved toward him with confidence and grace, her eyes never leaving his. As she reached him, Blackwood took her hands in his, unmindful of the watching crowd. "You are breathtaking," he whispered. "As are you," she returned, her smile illuminating her face with a beauty that had nothing to do with conventional standards and everything to do with the spirit behind her eyes. Father Thomas, the same chaplain who had performed their first ceremony with evident reluctance, now beamed at the couple before him. "Dearly beloved," he began, "we are gathered here to witness and bless the renewal of marriage vows between Captain Nathaniel Blackwood and Miss Eliza Montgomery Blackwood." The service proceeded with traditional solemnity, but when the time came for their vows, both had prepared their own words. "Eliza," Blackwood began, his voice steady and sure, "I took you first in mockery, not understanding the treasure I was claiming. You have taught me that true strength lies not in conquest, but in partnership, not in fear, but in respect. I pledge to you now, before all witnesses, my protection, my fidelity, my heart and my future, freely given, joyfully shared." Tears shimmered in Eliza's eyes as she responded, "Nathaniel, I accepted you first in calculation, seeking safety in an alliance of convenience. What I found instead was a man who saw beyond appearances to the woman beneath. I pledge to you my counsel, my courage, my trust and my love, honestly offered, gratefully returned." The exchange of rings sealed their renewed commitment, her new ring from Blackwood, and for him, a replacement for the one damaged in saving his life, a wide gold band inscribed inside with the words, "From mockery to miracle. By the authority vested in me," Father Thomas concluded, "I now pronounce you once again, and more truly, husband and wife. Captain Blackwood, you may kiss your bride." Unlike their first perfunctory kiss on the pier, this embrace spoke of genuine passion and tender regard. The chapel erupted in cheers, led, as Jenkins had predicted, by the enthusiastic crew of the newly recommissioned merchant vessel Siren's Promise. Later, as they greeted their guests in the garden overlooking the harbor, Governor Worthington approached with his wife. "Captain and Mrs. Blackwood," he said warmly, "may I be the first to present you with this." He handed Blackwood an official-looking document. "Your merchant charter, approved and sealed. The Siren's Promise is cleared to begin trade routes to Boston next month." "Thank you, Governor," Blackwood replied, sharing a significant look with Eliza. Boston, where her father's name would finally be cleared, where their new venture would begin. As sunset painted the horizon in shades of gold and rose, the couple stood together at the garden's edge, watching their future unfold before them, like the endless sea. "From a dare to destiny," Eliza mused, her hand secure in his. "Who would have believed?" "I believe in us," Blackwood answered simply. "Everything else is just the journey."